We're ready to go whenever you are.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Arnprior Operations Advisory Committee for Monday, March 21st, 2022. The time is 6:30 p.m. Roll call, please, Carla.
Citizen member Phil McLeod, citizen member John Shane, citizen member David Coro,
Here.
citizen member Emily Laprade, Vice Chair Chris Toner,
Here.
and Chair Dan Lynch.
Here. For the people that are listening, we do have quorum. Phil has an issue and has bowed out for this evening, and Emily has retired as she no longer lives in Arnprior. We'll continue on with our land acknowledgement statement. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we work and gather is a traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe people. This Algonquin nation have lived on this land for thousands of years, long before the arrival of the European settlers, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. Motion to adopt the agenda, please, Kayla.
Be resolved that the agenda for the Operations Advisory Committee meeting dated Monday, March 21st, 2021 be adopted.
Mover and seconder, please. John,
I'll second.
Dave, thanks. Any questions or amendments? Hearing none, those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting, November 15. Kayla, please.
The Operations Advisory Committee approved the minutes listed under item 6A on the agenda, being the Operations Advisory Committee minutes of November 15th, 2021.
So the mover is going to be Chris and the seconder is Dave, because we're the only people here.
Okay.
Any questions or comments to the minutes? Seeing none, those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Presentations. The OPP statistics, OPP Inspector Don Ferguson. Nice to see you, Inspector.
Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. It's been a crazy start to 2022, I can tell you that much. I can't believe we're already to the end of March. It seems just yesterday we're celebrating New Year's Day, but that's so life in my world anyways. I thought I would give you a summary of where we ended for 2021 year-to-date stats before we moved on to we're almost finished through the first quarter. So I'll give you two parts of it, and then we'll go for questions from there. For the end of year summary, in comparison to where we were in 2020, we've seen our violent crimes increase by 725 hours. Assaults and other threats, along with criminal harassment, appear to be the three categories that seem to be driving this. Digging in for further assessment on it, there's no common denominator that's driving these stats. It's just these three areas that seem to be up for calls for service that are being reported to us. Property crime again is up an additional 598 hours in comparison to 2020. Gas drive-offs, which is astounding, at 400 of the 598 hours, 455 hours were contributed to the gas drive-offs. And I think as we continue to see gas prices increase at the pumps, we're going to experience more and more of this until they adopt another manner of payment, right? I very short order, I think we'll see them mandatory paying up front before you're able to pump, because right there, like the 500 hours almost contributed to gas drive-offs, and they're really hard, especially for the transient population, to track down and to follow up on. We also seen an increase in mischiefs and thefts under this category. We saw a slight increase in other criminal code functions at 69 hours. The good news is we saw a decrease in drug possession, trafficking, statutes and acts. Overall, with the implementation of our mental health crisis response team, we saw a decrease of 28% for calls for service in this area. So it's proving to us that our program is working. I was successful at getting a further grant to subsidize and bring in an additional mental health crisis worker to bolster our coverage. So that process is underway currently, and we're hoping to get mental health crisis workers working till 10 p.m. During weeknights and having some coverage on the weekends. Where right now we're pretty much strictly Monday, Friday, 8 to 4. So hopefully as we continue into 2022, we'll see those numbers increase even more. I wholeheartedly believe in this process and this committee. So I'm thinking and hoping that we'll see good results of it. Operationally, we were up slightly by 37, and the same 3 common factors that were driving the calls for service up throughout the year have remained. Noise complaints, calls for service. We continue to see high calls for service on Edward Street, Desmond, and Sullivan Crescent. Common youth, or trouble with youth, the commonality within that one is that anything to do with skateboards during the summer months were the ones being reported as a problem. And neighbor disputes continue to increase, but no commonality amongst the calls. But our major calls for service for neighbor disputes were located on Burwash, Madawaska, Spruce, Harrington, and Albert, with Burwash and Albert being the highest. Apparently they don't like to get along with each other in those areas. Operational number 2, which is your false alarms. In that category, we've seen an increase at the end of the year, about 60 hours. False alarms is the sole contributor to seeing that increase. And the prolific offenders, as I reported last year, Giant Tiger, the Public Works Garage, Empire District High School, Home Hardware, Canadian Tire, Town Hall, and a single private residence on James Street are the prolific offenders that we continue to keep going back for these false alarms. Overall traffic was down slightly by 9.3 billable hours. So we ended the year with an increase of calls for billable hours of calls services, 1,289.4 hours. So higher than I'm sure anybody, including myself, would like to see. How we attack that will be for further discussion and analysis. So there's the bad news. Good news is we've started 2022 in a much different position. Year to date, in comparison to where we were at 2021 at this time, we're down 866.7 hours. We've seen violent crimes go down 193.2 hours. Property crimes went down 201.5 hours. Our other criminal code category is down 61.6 hours. We've seen no real change in drug possession. It remains the same. Statutes and acts are down 78.2 hours. Operational are down 299.7 hours. Operational number 2 is down 32.5 hours, and we've seen no change in the traffic hours year to date. So we've seen some improvements, and it's hard when we report quarterly or even on a yearly basis to have a real true analysis of what's driving calls for service in business without having that 3 to 5 year comparison in history, the tracking history. So we'll continue to watch this, and I continue to look for areas to target where there is an issue that is arising so we can nip it in the bud, or an explanation to what's driving service. I'm sure there's questions about the freedom protest and how that's impacted our detachment area and the municipality. So I'll just open up to the board if anybody has anything specific they would like to ask about it. I was involved as a critical incident commander within the nation's capital NCRCC. I don't even know if I know what the whole abbreviation stands for, but I spent 24 consecutive days within that command post overseeing our deployed members that were on the ground in operations. So I have a lot of information, not all of it good, but I was there and I saw and I witnessed and I contribute, and I was very happy on February 18th when we saw the forces go in and start removing these occupiers from the downtown streets of Ottawa, and we resorting back to normal living. questions? Go ahead, Chair.
I have
Inspector,
one.
is that the end of the report, Inspector, or?
That's the end of my report, pending
Okay.
any questions. And I was kind of expecting some questions surrounding the convoy
Okay.
and our participation and impacts to municipal billing.
Yes. John, or sorry, David?
I just have one quick one. How did it get to go on so long? How did it get out of hand? I've heard all kinds of things, but is there some logic for it, or is it just?
I'm sure there's logic behind it. This wasn't an OPP-led event. We were brought in to assist our community partners in the Ottawa Police Service in the handling and the deployment of resources to this area. At the onset, in Ottawa Police on a weekly basis are dealing with different protests. It's a protest on Parliament Hill is not anything new for Ottawa Police or Parliament Hill. I don't think they expected the level of support that we saw and the level of commitment of protesters. I think they anticipated that they would come for the weekend, have their moment, make their statements, and then go. And then when they didn't leave on the Sunday night of that first weekend, we were left dealing with the impact that it was having within the community. And it wasn't until we were 10 plus days probably in when the extra resource request came of us, and then we were able to start, and not only us, Sûreté de Quebec, RCMP, the Parliament Protection Services, along with VIP security, everybody contributed to the overall outcome when finally we saw some action. But it just took time to get the wheels of motion in place because of information received and how they acted on it.
Any other questions from the committee? Chris?
Thank you, Dan. I guess more close to home, I see, so you're saying that you've applied for a grant for another mental health crisis worker, which I think is fantastic. And it's great to see that you're so passionate about this program as well. So if you are successful, so you'll have two mental crisis workers. Now, is that for Renfrew and Arnprior combined that you could?
So the application, and sorry, and I maybe confused you. We were successful in our application, and we received approximately over the next 2 years, $137,000.
Okay.
That will help fund the new position. And it's a temporary position, and hopefully at the end of the 2 years, we can prove that the need is there and we can apply for long-term funding to have this position stick around. But under the Renfrew Police Services Board, because only police services boards were permitted to apply for these grants. So under the Police Services Board of Renfrew, we made the application with their support. But the services that we provide and that is covered for our mental health crisis response team is for all of my detachment area, of all of the Renfrew County that we're responsible for. So Arnprior, McNabb, Braeside, Whitewater region, it's applied evenly across the board and as an on-need basis.
Okay, so there is still only one.
At the current time, the job ad was posted within the mental health and addiction services program this morning for the second position. So the wheels are in motion, and it's just a matter of identifying the next member, having them trained and getting them up to speed and getting them boots on the ground.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, I have read a lot about it, and I know, like across the continent, really, like in the United States and across Canada, they've had great success with this. So hopefully we can kind of get the momentum going forward and get the people the help that they actually need, and you and your team, I guess your trained police officers can focus on
Policing.
on policing. That's right. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole purpose of the program, is to try to early identification of a problem and have that linkage of the services that are required for the individual, as opposed to having people call the police in mental health crisis as the last resort when they have nowhere else to turn to and they've hit that critical point in their mental health and their wellness. They call us because there's nowhere else to turn to, and we answer the call for service because we answer all calls for service, of course. But we're not the best trained and the best equipped to deal with mental health. We have electricians, mechanics, people with like college diplomas. We're not doctors, we're not psychologists or clinicians. So we're really not the best people to be out there and for a long-term support for people who are suffering crisis. If we can get there, have them identified early and triage them through the system, that's where we're seeing success. And it is a proven program throughout, like Empire alone having almost close to 30% reduction. And I'm seeing the same results across all 7 municipalities that I oversee.
That's great. Okay, well, hopefully we can keep the ball rolling, and that's awesome. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you.
Any other questions before I ask mine? Seeing none. Inspector, I'm concerned, first was that 500 hours for gas drive off for the town of Arnprior. That, to me, is outrageous, I guess, is a good word.
And in all honesty, I was shocked when I saw that number associated to under that category as what was driving our calls for service up. It is an astronomical number. And the only reason and I would have to be permitted time to dig and have true analysis of any trends with it. But I think it's just where we're situated on Highway 17, right before the 417, that you can get off the highway and have access to gas instantly, essentially, which I think makes us just a vulnerable target for these things. And without the owners and the management of the properties who own the companies, without provisions that they're taking safety measures to ensure that they're protecting themselves, whether it's cameras or pay at the pump or pay in advance, with the cost like all-time high, like I won't say how many years I've been driving, but in my experience, I don't think any of us have ever seen gas prices that they are now. And as long as they continue to be this high and continue to rise, people out of desperation will probably continue to have this response to trying to make ends meet.
So true. My concern was that the gas pump people could have cameras, and once they do this, then I think over to you for the charge lane. And once the first guy hits the newspaper of $1,000 fine for stealing that $25 worth of gas, I think it may slow down. Don't know. The second question, Inspector, is to do again back to the truckers. They were in the area a while ago. Are we, the town, going to be billed any part of that for hours for service as part of the big picture?
No, everything's being under the trucker protest and under that umbrella. Everything's being billed provincially as opposed to municipal responsibilities. And as a safety measure, so we have a code that everything gets submitted to, and all the overtime and all the extra hours and expenses that have gone to, and it's tracked and provided back to the provincial government. And locally, to ensure that nothing is slipping through, that you're not getting charged billable hours for overtime or calls for service. I personally have gone through each and every overtime submission through between January and February that members have submitted, ensuring the proper classification so that nothing's falling through onto your plate.
Thank you. And my last question is, the last time we had a meeting, we had a real crisis with opioids, people dying. And on the news tonight, I see there's two kids from Kingston that are providing how to do yourself in, and they're being charged under the Youth Act, I guess. But I'm curious, have our opioids gone down at all?
I haven't run the stats on the opioids since our last meeting. The opioid crisis is present within all the communities, I think, within North America. It's not going away. We are tackling it like our community's street crime unit is actively investigating and has laid charges and executed warrants dealing with the fentanyl distribution. but it's a never ending war. It's kind of like you get one and two more pop up. As long as people want to get their high through the opioid drug, we're going to battle it. And as long as it's fairly readily accessible, right? As long as doctors are continuing writing prescriptions to the wrong people who are getting to the wrong hands out in the community, we're going to have this crisis. So the problem and the response is at a much higher level than you or I.
Thank you for that. The note to people that are going to be using, make sure you have a friend with you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Inspector. No other questions. We'll go on to number 2. Caleb, please, the fire department update.
Perfect. The Operations Advisory Committee received the fire department update presentation and information regarding firefighter certification regulation for information.
Sorry, Kayla, I made one error already. Could we have a mover and seconder to accept inspector's report as information, please? John, David, all in favor, please? Carried. Thank you. Sorry, Kayla.
Then a mover and seconder if possible, Mr. Chair, for the
Yep.
fire department one.
And a mover and seconder, Chris and Dave.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just going to put up the chief's presentation, so just give me 1 second.
Thank you, Kayla.
No problem. Can you see that?
Sorta.
Sorta?
Well, I've got my,
Okay. Can
of
everybody
people.
else see that?
I got a bunch of people on the right side.
Yep.
So I can-
That's
You will
okay.
have them.
You'll see most of it now.
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I just want a little update from the fire department here. I too started off a little bit with what took place last year. So 2021 ended with the fire department responding to 151 calls for service. This number is down from the 3-year average of 156 calls for the service, and the department finished the year with 7 fire-related and 27 motor vehicle collision-related calls. To date, so far this year, the department has responded to 29 calls for service in 2022, which currently is above the last 3-year average of 22 calls. So we're starting off a little bit on the high side, and we'll see how that progresses throughout the year. 2022, so on to prevention. We've seen an addition with a new member of the fire prevention office of the fire department. Firefighter Bob Smith was a successful candidate and joined the full-time staff on February 22nd. And there's Bob there. He should be a familiar face, a local gentleman. Wasn't able to be with us tonight. He's a little under the weather, so we have to just look at his photo tonight. But I'm sure you'll get to meet him in the future. Bob also assumes the role of captain in his duties as a firefighter. And Bob did join the department in the spring of 2015, and he has excelled in his role as a volunteer member of the department. Bob has begun his training to become a certified fire inspector and public educator through the Ontario Fire College programs. And we all look forward to working with Bob and watching him grow in the future and become a good part of our team. In regards to training, with 2022 brought more COVID-19 restrictions, causing a suspension of in-person training again for us. Upon the commencement of training, volunteers performed back to basic evolutions, followed by annual job performance reviews for ice rescue. We had 2 weekend sessions that took place on the lower Madawaska River, where members of the ice team completed their annual skills evaluations. And just a few pictures of you. So there's the team assembling with our RDC. That's Deputy Nicholas in the water. He's pretending to be a victim out there. He said it wasn't too cold, but they did pick one of the coldest days of the winter to do this. So he's being rescued with our RDC. So 2 men on the team going out to make the rescue. And this particular evolution is a single rescuer making what we call a go rescue. So he's going to go right into the water and rescue the individual that's the victim. same deal. He's trying to do it from the ledge without getting wet, I guess you'd say. We always try to get it from the surface before making entry ourselves. And in this case, he did get in the water, and now the team's pulling him out from the shore. So rope team on the shore pulling him off out of the ice. Our recruits, so we have, as you know, 13 recruits that started with us. They're not quite at the entry level into the water, so they completed, during the same 2 weekend sessions, they completed awareness level ice water rescue training, followed by an in-water swim testing at the Nick Smith Center, so the indoor pool. So we put them through some, we want to make sure they can swim before we use them for ice water rescue purposes. So in that they perform a 800-meter swim, tread water, and then also perform a simulated rescue with a floating mannequin type thing that they can do the swim test with it. Community risk assessment. In May of 2018, Ontario Regulation 37818 was introduced, which requires every municipality to, in the province of Ontario, to complete a review of a community risk assessment. Ontario Regulation 37818 came into effect on July 1st, 2019, and has a 5-year completion mandate. So therefore must be completed by July 21st, 2024. And Council has approved the capital funds for completion of the community risk assessment in 2022. Community risk assessment, or a CRA, is a process of identifying and analyzing risks within the community and prioritizing what those risks might be towards public safety. The project will use both quantitative and qualitative research methods to develop a strong understanding of current and future needs and circumstances of the community and customer service demands to the public. Community risk assessment must include a list of mandatory profiles, so geographic profiles, so basically where the community is located and what the lay of the land of the municipality, building stock, what types of buildings we have within our municipality, critical infrastructure profile, so what infrastructure within the municipality, sort of prioritize it by what is most important. Demographic profiles, so the type of people that live within our community, age and most specifically age of people within the community. Our hazard profile, is there anything within our community that is a high hazard? And public safety response profile, so what do we have within our community that would respond to these types of incidents? As well, community service profiles, so service clubs and stuff, what can they provide in types of emergencies? The economic profile, what basically the economy of the people that live within our municipality. It looks at past losses and event history profiles, the number and types of emergency responses, injuries, deaths, and dollar losses that have occurred in the past. Comparison to the community's fire loss statistics with provincial fire loss statistics. So it compares us to other municipalities of the same types and sizes throughout the province. And when it's looking at these risks, it's looking specifically at risks that are related to fire protection services. So it doesn't look at healthcare or anything other than stuff related to the fire service stuff. Once completed, the community risk assessment will aid fire department staff and members of municipal council to make informed decisions about the types and prioritization of fire protection services provided to the community based on the risks identified within the community. Also, something that came into play in January, Firefighter Certification. So on the 28th of January, the Ontario government released the framework for mandatory minimum training standards for Ontario firefighters, and it was open for public consultation. This framework is a revisit of the Ontario Reg 37918, which was released in May of 2018 by the Liberal government and revoked on October 4th, 2018 of the newly elected Conservative government. The new proposed regulation under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act of 1997 would establish a model that outlines the mandatory minimum standards and corresponding job performance requirements of firefighters delivering specific fire protection services. What will this mean for mandatory fire certification mean for Empire. Firefighters performing the tasks identified in the list of core services provided by the municipalities in their establishing and regulating bylaw shall be trained to the NFPA standards of each task, tested by a provincial evaluator of each, and certified for those required NFPA standards. Fire department staff are currently waiting on the outcome of the review of the input received from consultation period and the release of the regulation by the Ministry of Solicitor General. Once the regulation is released and the impact to our fire department is assessed for further information, we will be providing it. Any questions on any of that, people?
Any questions for the chief? Chief, just one, I know you mentioned the number of responses that we had are more in 2022. When we do our statistics, could we get a percentage for the number of houses? Like 2 years ago, we had, say, 500 houses, and we've got like another 500 built in the last year. So when you say we have 21 more calls, we've had 300 more houses to respond to. So when you look at our percentage, it's may have gone down rather than gone up.
Yeah, we could, I'm sure, yeah, with regards to the growth in population, yeah, is it a fair, we weren't really adding percentages, just more numbers for call out, but yeah, you may, I see what you mean. If we have increase in population, but we're not getting any more calls, is that a good thing? And I would think it would be, yeah.
And the last question, Chief, is I understand you may have had a meeting with other chiefs in the valley in reference to our certification, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
Do we have a joint consensus from the chiefs that we're all in the same boat on this thing as a volunteers?
I think it depends. Each municipality, obviously, they're responsible for their own training and their own memberships, and some have different challenges from not only from their pool of people that they can hire on their departments, and the retention of firefighters on their departments. That seems to be one of the biggest challenges in our area, well, across the province, really. And the more rural and the smaller municipalities you get to, firefighter recruitment and retention is the biggest challenge for most of them. And now with regards to having to get firefighters commit to the training that is required, and obviously training is of utmost importance to do the job, but the commitment to get them through the certification program and then being able to keep them on your department is a big challenge that most small municipalities are finding hard to do. And that was, and when this is not a new thing. Certification of firefighters has been coming to the table many times over the last 20 years, basically. First through the Ontario standards, and then it changed in 2012 to the NFPA standards. And at that time, we were told that fire departments had to train to the standard. And then in 2017, 2018, they came out with the regulation saying it was mandatory, and it was quickly changed out. The regulation at that time was quickly revoked with a change in government because let's say the province wasn't themselves ready to handle the certification end, because they were responsible for doing the certification. So we've a lot of the same messages went back through the consultation process. 130-page document went back to the OFM from the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs with comments and suggestions. That was on the 28th of February, and in all of their presentations, said that they would take the information and come back with a plan, basically. And it's been almost a month and we haven't heard anything yet. So we're not sure exactly what's going to happen with it, Dan, but I don't anticipate that firefighter certification will go away. It's just a matter of how it will be implemented for each municipality. And I do see the importance of it, but there will be challenges for small municipalities across the province, not just in our area.
And our last question, Chief, was to do with when you mentioned training, it clicked on. Do we back up 1 second? We have one more meeting in June or May, the 16th. And so haven't given the opportunity to ask you the question now. Enbridge provides grant money for training. Do we apply for that, or do they pick which fire department's going to get it?
Enbridge typically, it comes out every year or every second year. Sometimes their money is put towards carbon monoxide. Usually they flip-flop. They go 1 year's training and 1 year's towards supporting carbon monoxide education and providing alarms to certain municipalities. On 2 occasions, we have on 2 occasions. A number of years ago, we received funds for training, and we bought a bunch of training materials through Enbridge. And then another opportunity we had, they provided us with 300 combination smoke CO alarms, and we did get into that. And if anything comes forward, we will certainly look to apply for it. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Any other questions for the chief?
Yeah, I do,
David?
Dan. Rick, I'm not sure this applies, but I want to ask the fire department, the requirement for emergency lighting in buildings, and in particular condo building. Are the fire departments involved in how many you have to have and whether they're working and all the rest of that stuff? Does that come under you guys, or is it that up to the condo boards themselves to decide what they want?
It's absolutely the owner's responsibility to make sure that the equipment is, if it is there, it is working.
Okay.
When buildings are built, the the Ontario Building Code would determine what is required for the building.
Okay.
And then once it's built, the fire department is to ensure that it is maintained, and it is the owner's responsibility to ensure that it is working. And if there is ever a case where the fire department were to be do the inspection of the building and it was not working as intended, then orders would be issued for it to be put into a proper operating.
Okay, I guess that's what I'm asking. That's
Yeah,
what I
so
wanted to know.
It is the owner's responsibility to ensure that things are working, and the fire code does deal with those types of incidences.
Okay,
and we
so
can-
much like the fire detectors themselves and stuff, where you guys.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
There would be under a schedule required by the fire code to be maintained,
Okay.
and certain provisions to the standard that they would have to be tested to on an annual basis as well.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, all those in favor of the report as information? Opposed, carried. Next one, the emergency management, please, Kayla.
I'm just going to turn it over to Corey. I think he just has an update, a verbal update, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm going to give you a brief update on our emergency management program and your function in the committee as the emergency management program committee. On March 14th, I brought a report to council on our emergency management program committee restructure. I'll provide you a brief background on emergency management and sort of for our viewers that may be watching at home, so they're kind of up to speed. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how the report unfolded and our plan as a municipality going forward. So for our background, the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, it requires that each Ontario municipality develop and implement an emergency management program in accordance with the Act and its associated regulations and standards. Ontario Regulation 38004 under the Act prescribes our municipal standards to be observed, which include the requirement for every municipality to appoint a community emergency management coordinator, which is myself in this case, and an emergency management program committee, which has been a function of the Operations Advisory Committee. The primary function of our emergency management program committee is to advise council on the development and implementation of the emergency management program and to conduct an annual review of the program, making some recommendations to council for its revision if necessary. So for a little bit more background on that, in 2013, our town's procedural bylaw as amended allowed council to adopt an advisory committee structure for the town. Bylaw number 6190-13 enacted the Town of Arnprior's Advisory Committee terms of reference, which indicates that the Operations Advisory Committee is to serve in an advisory capacity to council regarding matters related to infrastructure, strategies, capital projects, engineering, and policing. In 2015, the Emergency Management Program Committee was folded into the Operations Advisory Committee in hopes of eliminating any kind of duplication of work by staff by allowing the Operations Advisory Committee to provide comment on the Emergency Management Program as well. However well-intended that was, as we've seen here tonight, town advisory committees can have very heavy agendas. And in the case of the Operations Advisory Committee, this can oftentimes detract from the purpose of having a standalone emergency management program committee that is comprised of individuals solely dedicated to emergency management as defined in Ontario Regulation 3804. Similarly, council cycles can dictate the frequency of town advisory committee meetings, which can have an adverse effect on emergency management programs activities such as our seasonally planned public education initiatives, required staff training, and exercises, as well as meeting those annual reporting timelines. So just to give you a brief on what 3804, OREG 3804 actually says with regards to committee composition, it states that every municipality shall have an emergency management program committee. The committee shall be composed of the municipality's emergency management program coordinator, myself, a senior municipal official as appointed by council, such members of council as may be appointed by council, such municipal employees who are responsible for emergency management functions as may be appointed by council, and other such persons as may be appointed by council. So the persons under clause E, which are those other such persons, they may only be officials or employees of any level of government who are involved in emergency management, representatives of organizations outside government who are involved in emergency management, or persons representing industries that may be involved in emergency management. And the council shall appoint one of those committee members to be the chair. So as such, I recommended that council amend bylaw 6190-13 appendix C to remove goal number 5 from our OAC structure, which states that the Operations Advisory Committee acts in the capacity of the town's Emergency Management Program Committee. Further to that, I recommended that moving forward, council enacts a bylaw to ensure that our program committee is composed of the following personnel, which would better align with Ontario Regulation 3804 and our council approved emergency plan. So the Community Emergency Management Coordinator, myself, would be the chair. Head of council would sit on the committee. Our EOC Commander, which was our Chief Administrative Operator, our Operations Section Chief, which is our Fire Chief, our Planning Section Chief, the Town Clerk, our Logistics Section Chief, our General Manager of Operations, Mr. Steckley, and our Finance Section Chief, our General Manager of Client Services, Treasurer. It's my hope that implementing these changes will improve some operational efficiencies so as to ensure that the program committee functions continually and at regular intervals, as well as on an as-needed basis. So we're not at the mercy of a council committee agenda. At the onset of an emergency or any changes that need to happen, we can assemble these people readily available because they are municipal staff that are trained in emergency management. And it also falls within that legislative framework of the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. So I gave council 2 options. Option 1, I said that they can amend the bylaw to remove Appendix C, goal number 5, and support the recommendation to enact a bylaw to restructure our program committee. Option 2, we could maintain the status quo, and the Operational Advisory Committee will continue to function as the Emergency Management Program Committee. That wasn't my recommended option. Again, because council committees have multiple agendas, we operate on fixed schedules and they have cyclical staff changes. So staff change every couple of years with our election cycles. So the long and the short of it, council chose option 1. And as of March 14th, 2022, I'm sure some of you will be happy to know that the Operations Advisory Committee will no longer function in the capacity of the town's Emergency Management Program Committee. That being said, I will still bring policy updates and procedural updates and any updates to emergency management to this committee as information only. You just won't have any legislative responsibilities under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. but you still will get all the updates as they pertain to emergency management with the town. Any questions on that one? Yes, sir.
Not a statement, Corey. Well, more of a statement.
Sure.
To the committee, we're relieved of duties. That's the good news. The other news was, if you remember 2 years ago, council said to the committee, yeah, not to worry about the report to go in. And we said, thank you very much. And then we didn't send it in. And the next year we got doo-doo from the emergency preparedness because we didn't send it in, which was rectified last year. So having said that, we've been relieved of our duties. It's over to the new kids on the block to ensure that we maintain our certification, for lack of better words. And I know we're in good hands with Corey. On behalf of the committee, Corey, thanks for taking us through the last couple of years on this anyways, because we're all sort of new to it.
Yeah, for sure.
And anyways, we look forward to hearing your news, how this new committee works out. Hopefully there'll be no emergencies.
No, absolutely. And as always, I'll bring you any update on our freshette calls as we move into flood season at our next meeting as well. So you'll still get all those updates.
Great. So mover in a second to accept this report as information, please. John and Dave, all in favor? Carried, opposed. Next, we have John, the 2022 capital projects money.
The Operations Advisory Committee received the 2022 capital projects department presentation as information.
Mover and seconder, please. Chris. Dave. John, please.
Just going to bring up the presentation here. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so as Kayla just read, we will just do an overview of the the Operations Department 2022 capital items to give the committee an update on what we will be working on this year. So probably the biggest dollar value anyway of the capital budget is pretty much always our linear infrastructure renewal. So our roads, water main, sewer, capital replacement items. So this year we showed us 3 different capital projects. However, we have combined all 3 into one tender, which is out to potential contractors to bid at this very moment. And that tender will close on April 1st, at which point we will then bring a report to council with the results and seek a recommendation to award. So the 3 streets or the 3 areas that we are looking to do this year, so under our what we call our rolling road rehab budget, which focuses really on surface work, so road surface, curbs and sidewalks, as opposed to the underground infrastructure. This year we're committing the use of those funds to Ida Street North from Elgin Street, which is the county road, back to the dead end, which is near the Algonquin Trail, if you will. And then the next street over, Norman Street North, similarly from the county's Elgin Street back to the Algonquin Trail. Those 2 streets are in very poor condition. The surfaces are past due for replacement, and we'll be doing the curb replacement on those streets as well. So we will be eliminating the bits of sidewalk that are on those dead ends, simply because they are extremely low volume traffic roads. So we'll be simply replacing them with concrete curbs. The other 2 major streets, so Craig Street and Hugh Street, south, both from William Street to approximately Mary Street. Hugh Street has an additional half a block to the dead end towards the back of the schoolyard. So these streets will be full reconstruction, so full road reconstruction, water main and sanitary sewer. The majority of the storm sewer will remain because it was replaced more recently and is a plastic pipe and it's still in good condition. There's a few spots where we need to realign the storm sewer just to get our separation with our water main. And then we'll be replacing some catch basins throughout those streets as well. But those will really be, that'll be the heart of where our major infrastructure construction will take place this year. So The nice thing is it's not a real busy area. It's not a major collector road or anything that sees significant traffic volumes. So disruption to residents will be primarily the residents who live on those streets, as opposed to resulting in detours for traffic around town. Next slide, please. We also have 2 roof replacement projects, which again, we've managed to combine them into one single tender to try to obtain some efficiencies in the bidding process. So we have the water filtration plant roof replacement, which is the main section of the water filtration plant. As you see, it's that sort of square shaped, if you will, and then the 2 smaller roofs, as you see on the top and the right of the screen, those are not in the contract, and those were replaced more recently as part of the last expansion. So we have had some roof leak issues over the course of the last year or 2, and this will seek to replace that roof, which has now reached the end of its useful life, and eliminate those roof leaks that we are experiencing. So the budget on that is $100,000. And then next slide, please, Carol. We also will be doing a significant portion of roof at the Nick Smith Center. So we have been working on replacing the various roof sections over the last few years. And this year we'll see the majority of the front entrance section of the building. So if you can sort of orient yourself, the main entrance to the building is that small little, right there, the 103. That's that kind of little overhang as you come into the building. So the community hall, the pool, the main entrance, all those roofs will be included in this tender. And the budget for that is $415,000. So again, that tender is out for bidders to bid at the moment, and it also closes on April 1st. A few smaller projects we have with respect to our facilities at the fire hall, a small project to do some upgrades to the fire alarm system. At the Nick Smith Center, there's a few smaller projects, some upgrades to the refrigeration room. It has to do with the ventilation system in that back refrigeration room. We're replacing one of the several HVAC units, rooftop units on the roof of the Nick Smith Center. Pool filtration system, which has already actually been repaired by the operations staff and a contractor. They ended up having some issues with the pool boiler as well, which they were able to replace with the available budget. So they got a bit more work done than they were actually hoping to do, but it worked out quite well for them. And then a project that is not yet underway, but we did receive a full grant funding for from upper levels of government, is for the replacement of the Nick Smith Center desiccant units in both of the arenas. So these are basically the dehumidifiers that work to help with the cooling system as well as dehumidification in the arenas. So we're all fairly well aware, anyone who's attended the Nick Smith Center over the last number of years, fairly well aware of some of the moisture issues that we have had up there as far as the moisture on the glass. So what this project will do is actually improve and increase the dehumidification abilities of these units, and actually relocate a couple of them as well to try to get a better airflow. And the idea is that this will ultimately improve the user experience and minimize the amount of moisture that accumulates on the glass of the boards. Moving over to machinery and equipment, one of the projects that we have this year, which is fully funded through development charges, so it is one of our growth-related projects that we identified several years ago as part of the last development charge bylaw update, is to add another heavy piece of equipment to our fleet, primarily for winter control and managing our increasingly growing road network in town as the town continues to grow and more subdivisions are added in. So what we elected to do was actually purchase an additional loader similar to the one that you see in this picture. This is a picture of our other loader that we have already in our fleet. And this new loader was recently tendered and closed just last week, actually. So we have the results from that tender for a new loader complete with a plow and a wing. And those results will be coming to council a week from today on March 28th for consideration of award. Another fleet machinery and equipment item that we're undertaking this year, it's smaller dollar value, but we're quite interested to see how this works out. This is an example photo taken from their website, but the purchase is for a 6-foot mower deck similar to what you see here, and it will attach to one of our 2 trackless sidewalk machines, which we use for sidewalk snow clearing and spraying salt in the winter months. So those trackless units really have not been used in the off season in the summer. So what we are hoping to do is maximize the use of those pieces of equipment by attaching a mower to them, putting turf tires on it, as you kind of see in the photo, and actually gaining more use of that throughout the year. So we'll be seeing how that goes. It's a bit of a kind of a trial run, if you will, and potentially, if it works out well, we may even look at adding an additional unit for the second mower in a later year. Continuing on with vehicles, so we have the replacement of one of our 3 major plow trucks. So we will be replacing number 78 truck with a tandem axle plow truck. The value of that is estimated $280,000. That was also closed last week, so we do have the tender results for that as well, which will be provided in more detail at the council meeting next Monday. And smaller vehicles, we have the replacement of 2 half-ton trucks, as you see here, one from the Roads and Services branch and one from the Parks and Rec department. And along with that is, on the next slide, we also have a utility van from our Waterworks branch. So those 3 vehicles were actually tendered all as one, closed last week as well. So we got a really good jump on a lot of our tenders this year. We really prioritized getting those documents together, even some of which were prepared before the budget was approved by council in February. So that as well, we brought to council on Monday for consideration of award. The tender results for the 2 half-ton trucks and the van did come in a little over budget. We're certainly seeing a pretty dramatic increase in pricing of these smaller kind of passenger vehicles with the pandemic and all of the impacts that are causing the supply chain issues right now. So again, the details will be provided to council on Monday for that as well. Next slide, please. Another initiative that we are undertaking this year, we're going to be working with the Recreation Department, but we'll be providing some assistance because the Operations Department is quite heavily involved with the development of new subdivisions in town. But this is, as you see in the photo here, there is 2 parklands in the Marshalls Bay Meadow subdivision, which is on Madawaska Boulevard in town, as highlighted there. So in phase 1, there will be a park, and then in phase 4, there will be an additional park in a later year. But what typically happens with these parks in these subdivisions is that the developer just provides the land, and what we kind of refer to it as clean and green it. So they grade it, they provide it to the municipality, graded, topsoiled, and seeded. So it's just kind of a blank slate, if you will. And then the municipality is actually responsible for undertaking the design of the park, designing aspects of the park, including pathways, benches, garbage cans, play structures, trees, that type of thing. And then what we will be doing is using development charges, which we've been collecting from various developments to actually fund those projects and the development of them. So this year we have $50,000 to undertake parkland design for these 2 parks at the Marshalls Bay Meadow subdivision, as well as the future park at the Fairgrounds subdivision, which will actually join in with some of the existing parkland at the rear of the Nick Smith Center. So that will be undertaken this year. Again, the design stage. We will be looking to consult with the public at some point later this year on some of the design aspects of this assignment as well. Carrying on with some design assignments, this one as well, we'll be working closely with Graham and the Recreation Department, providing some assistance to him with respect to one of the number of projects recommended in the Waterfront Master Plan that Graham's been working on over the last little while. So one of the highest priorities in that Waterfront Master Plan is a recommendation to improve the pathways along the waterfront, particularly adding an asphalt surface to the main section of the waterfront from Robert Simpson Park all the way along the Madawaska River and kind of back up towards the main bridge in town, as you see that sort of green dash line on the left, on the west side of the Madawaska River. So this year there's some funds in the capital budget to hire an engineering firm and develop an actual detailed design and grading plan. They'll have to do a detailed survey and then develop the grading plan, which we can then use to tender for that work in a future year. Similarly, working on another design assignment closely with Graham and the Recreation Department. Another strong recommendation and high priority of the Waterfront Master Plan is the design of an accessible ramp at Robert Simpson Park. So we'll be providing some assistance. Patrick in the Operations Department, who manages a lot of the Operations Department facilities, will provide some assistance on this assignment as well. And there's still a couple of renditions. This one image, as you see, is sort of the image that that is included in the Waterfront Master Plan. But there have been additional alternate renditions and sort of concepts as to how this pathway may look, or sort of this ramp may look. And there may still be consideration given to sort of a switchback design, sort of a zigzag back and forth, just sort of to the left of where you see the existing staircase in this photo. That may ultimately be where the preferred location ends up being, but throughout this assignment, they'll kind of flush out the various options and sort of consider the pros and cons of the options that are available. As far as land improvements go, we have a capital project this year to purchase and install columbariums at the Mallock Road Cemetery. So the picture to the left is a photograph of the existing columbaria that were installed at the Albert Street Cemetery a few years ago. And what we've been planning in the long range capital forecast for the last several years is to actually purchase and install similar units at the Mallock Road Cemetery to provide another option for residents to consider, as opposed to earth burial or cremation services. So these are essentially a vault, if you will, with small doors. You can kind of see in the photograph the sort of small doors along the face. And again, it's the similar idea to sort of a cremation plot, but instead of an earth burial, it's sort of a locked, sealed vault, if you will. So Kayla is certainly probably one to speak to more of the details as far as the purchases of this unit. I know she's on the front line, and I know we've actually seen quite a significant uptake in the sale of these columbaria plots over the last several years. So we are quite hopeful that the installation of a similar unit at the Mallock Road Cemetery will be very popular as well over the coming years. So the aerial images you see there on the right just kind of gives you an approximate location as to the area that we are looking at installing the units. If you can kind of get your bearings, you can see Mallock Road across the top, and then the lower section is the internal road network within the cemetery itself. As well, we brought a conceptual landscape plan to council a few years ago. I don't have it in the slide deck tonight, but it gave council sort of an idea of what we could ultimately work towards over a multiple phased approach within this sort of design area of these columbaria. Incorporate some pathways, some benches, some landscaping, and just make it a bit more of a more inviting and pleasant location for residents to come and visit. Moving on to studies, we have a couple of studies this year. The one that I'm certainly looking forward to and has been a topic of discussion in various council meetings and with the county of Renfrew as well recently is the Transportation Pedestrian Master Plan. So this assignment, as you see here, is specifically for the town of Arnprior's road network and our pedestrian network as well. But the county of Renfrew has also very recently made the decision to proceed with an RFP for a county-wide transportation master plan. So this will encompass all county roads throughout the county. And they will be taking the lead essentially on this assignment. So they've recently invited lower tier municipalities to consider partnering with them on this assignment and incorporating kind of a provisional section to look at lower tier municipalities' road networks and pedestrian networks. So the timing is actually quite good for us that we have our section on the capital budget this year. And we are looking to actually take the county up on their offer to partner with them on that assignment, so that we can work with one consultant, transportation consultant, and really try to integrate the recommendations for the county roads as well as the town of Arnprior roads. So again, we are hopeful that there's going to be a number of recommendations, particularly on the county roads, being the busiest arterial roads in town: Daniel Street, Madawaska Street, Elgin Street, Division Street, and Baskin Drive, White Lake Road, Vanjamar Drive. All these roads, these are really all the streets that we are experiencing heavy growth, increased traffic volumes, and certainly experiencing some challenges with respect to traffic movements and traffic flows. So we'll be working closely with the county on this assignment and making sure that the town of Arnprior's concerns are raised throughout it, in an effort to try to get maximize the recommendations that are coming out of it for future projects and upgrades. And lastly, we have another study on for this year, what we refer to as the Integrated Waste Management Plan. So we did actually apply and receive approval to receive funding for this assignment through the Municipal Modernization Grant Program, which is excellent that we are able to use those funds for this assignment. So the last time we did an Integrated Waste Management Plan was in 2011, and it's certainly time for a renewal of this plan. And really, in a nutshell, what it'll do is look at sort of all aspects of our waste management program, everything from recycling, waste collection, curbside waste collection, landfill operations, and policies surrounding how our landfill operates, and looking to improve and potentially consider new streams into our waste management program. Probably look at options such as the viability of a green bin program or other types of composting initiatives that could be made available, and other types of waste and recycling activities that the town of Arnprior could or should be considering as we move forward over the next number of years. So you could kind of call it an integrated waste management master plan, if you will, but it really gives us an opportunity to take a step back and look at everything that we are doing from a waste management standpoint to see if where there's room for improvement. The other component that from this assignment that we are certainly looking to incorporate is consideration for the transition to the full producer pays model that will be coming in. So the town of Arnprior will be transitioning to the full producer responsibility model for the Blue Box recycling program in the midsection of 2023, which is coming up quite quickly. So we will be looking to review those changes and also just have a discussion on what that means from a budgetary standpoint for the town of Arnprior, because there will be budget dollars that will be sort of freed up, if you will, from our current Blue Box recycling program, which the town funds and maintains and oversees ourselves. So depending on what we ultimately determine to be available budgets for that may also be a source of revenue for some other types of recycling programs that we may want to explore as well. So this will be an interesting assignment. We're likely not to get this one underway until Deanna returns from her mat leave. So she won't be back for a couple of months, but I know she will be eager and anxious to take the lead on this assignment. She herself has a number of good ideas when it comes to waste management and other areas of improvement that the town could be exploring. So that's it in a nutshell. I will open up to the committee for any questions or comments.
John?
Yeah.
John, I have a question. Back to the Malik Road columbarium. I don't know, did you say when that was going to be, or did I hear you, or?
I don't have a specific, yeah, so it's this year. I don't have a specific time frame on that. That's one that we haven't got quite as early of a jump on. We were certainly jumping on the infrastructure and the vehicle and equipment. Patrick's going to be taking the lead on that, working actually quite closely with Kayla in the clerk's office, because they kind of oversee the administration of the earth burials and whatnot.
Well, I'll be coming to see Kayla, I'm sure, since I'm in queue for my next residence. This is what I'm kind of interested in, so I'm kind of curious as to when that's going to take place. Anyways, we'll let that go for now.
We do have
It's
a
coming,
list.
right.
We do have a list, Dave, of people who are
you do?
interested in being contacted. So if you want to send me a quick email,
Okay.
just so I don't forget, but I will make a note to
Okay,
put you
no,
on the list.
okay,
And when
that's
it comes
good
up,
to
we're
know.
going to contact people.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, and I have another question. Just back to the roads, and I know we have a lot of initiative for new roads and paving and whatnot. It's going to cost a lot of money, but we have a lot of potholes. I mean, the winter, it's rough, I understand. I think I've talked about this before. The patchwork that we do, is there a better way of doing what's currently done? Like I've observed some of these patches that are put in, and you know, they're kind of just a shovel full goes into a hole, and if you're lucky, you might get a footprint on it to pack it down. And the very next snowfall, all that asphalt is now up in the snowbank with the first snowplow that goes by. I'm just curious, is there some better way to do these patchings, you know, without a whole lot of, I don't know. I'm just asking the question. There's got to be a little better method to hammer it in or pack it in or something. But I notice it's usually just loose lay in. Everybody walks away, and you know, the first snowplow that goes by, it's all up in the snowbank. You know, just curious.
There's certainly better ways than your boot. Certainly don't like to hear that being the case, but yeah, we do have tampers. We do have ability to compact.
To pack it, cut it out a little bit. I mean, it might take a little more effort, and then pack the heck out of it rather than shovel it in and walk away. You know what I mean? There's got to be something. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a better way to be doing it than your boot, and we have that capability, and we do often do that the proper way as well. But it's a tricky time of year. Certainly.
Yes, I understand. I understand. I totally agree. But like I said, I observed, you know, over the years in the town, I mean, you know, this stuff winds up, you know, 2 weeks later in a snowbank, you know what I mean? And first plow that goes by, you know, I just wondering. That's all. Yeah. Yeah. I realize it's hard to control.
Yeah, and drainage is the arch nemesis of the potholes when you're into this time of year. Even when the staff put in the effort and really clean out the pothole and brush out the water and sweep out the water and then pack it in.
Yes.
It can often still pop out.
Something, you know, to edge them out better, that they could, and then pack this stuff in with a hammer or something.
Yeah,
I mean, it's gotta help. You know? I mean, I've put cold patches in. I realized I didn't get the abuse. I've put cold patches in my driveway that have been there for 25 years. You know, now it doesn't get the abuse. I understand that, but
yeah, that is the difference there for sure. It's particularly on those busy streets. They're constantly getting pounded, and it really doesn't take much to pop them out. But certainly, what we try to do is if we've got a couple of real bad ones, we try to get them cleaned up properly throughout the summer months when hot mix asphalt is available at the asphalt plants. Unfortunately, the cold patch material, which we buy, which is actually the better product, there's a couple different grades of it. We certainly buy the more expensive quality stuff. It's pretty much our best option.
It just seems to repeat itself and repeat, and I'm just curious if you know, if it's worth taking a look at.
It's a vicious cycle for sure, I will say.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for John? John? You're muted, unless we do sign.
Okay. Hey, John, is there any plans in the future to repave that portion of the road beside the Catholic Hall going down to the marina around the curve there?
Right down to the marina?
Yeah.
Like on the town's sort of parking lot, like right into the parking lot?
Catholic Hall around the corner there, not the corner, but around the curve. down into the marina itself. It's pretty rough along there. It's been like that for some time.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that a little closer. We're curious to see what the tender results come back at for the main streets, and then depending on where that budget remains, we do have operating budget that we use for some smaller patches, which that area may kind of fit in with. But depending on what the budget comes in at for the main road capital projects, if there's available funds, then we will be planning to use some of that for additional road patches as well. So I can certainly make a note of that area, and we'll keep that sort of high on the priority list because it is one that we've recently discussed. So it's on our radar for sure.
Yeah. So thank you.
David, do you have another question?
No, I'm good. No.
So we have a couple, John, as per normal. The streets on Hugh and Craig, will we only have one sidewalk? With our rehab, we're getting rid of the 2 sidewalks now, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, for those local roads with fairly low traffic and pedestrian volumes, we'll be looking to replace only the west side on both streets, and then the east side will see the sidewalk replaced with a curb.
Thank you. Part 2 is the new, it had to do with the waterfront that we're doing the paving or asphalt of the trail that goes from Hydro around the bridge and to Robert Simpson. With the library getting the new extension, that'll be a highlight bookmark of the start of the trail. So I think that'll be something of concern that we start at the library with our new road rather than Bell Park. Just a thought. And for the Malik Road, as you said, there was a concept plan, I don't know how many years ago, that showed sort of like an alcove with the different cemetery blocks, because I can't pronounce the consortiums, and some sort of a
Columbarians.
yes, those guys in sort of a half a moon, and there was some sort of a water fountain in the middle with benches around. There was a concept plan. At our next meeting, could you see if we can find that thing, and then maybe even take a picture of what it looks like today and what it could be? So Dave will be ready to know what's.
I'll be ready for my next residence. Actually, there's a beautiful one in Iroquois down on the Seaway. You got to go see that one. That's the one that got me going about these things. That's where I'm headed.
Okay, yeah, we can certainly bring that concept plan back to the next committee meeting for information.
Thank you. And the last question, I know with Dave talking about potholes, just to mention that we do have our own pothole machine, which is terrific. I was seeing it out the last couple of days doing their job. Which reminds me of snow. Hopefully it's almost gone. So to John, are we on budget, or do we have a guesstimate how we're doing for our budget for snow removal this year?
We do, yeah. So I actually had a look today at the variance report, not the variance report, but actually the most up to date in our accounting system. So we're sitting at about 45% of the budget spent today. Now there will be some additional costs that haven't sort of trickled in. Sometimes it takes a few weeks for invoices to follow and whatnot. And of course, our internal labor forces and whatnot would only be up to the most recent pay period, which is probably about a week and a few days ago. So there's still some additional costs that will be coming in for work that's been completed to date. But as of what we've paid in the system today, it's about 45% of the annual budget. So again, keep in mind that that's not a winter season, so that's a calendar year, right? So that 2022 budget needs to cover January to the end of December. So we still have next November and December that comes out of this budget as well.
Looking good. Any other questions for John before we close her off? All right. All those in favor of John's report? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To Caleb, any matters tabled, deferred, or unfinished business?
Nope.
None. Staff reports, I think we've covered. Any new business? Well, we have one more meeting to go, gentlemen, and that's going to be held on May 16th at 6:30 p.m. And with that, we'll ask for a motion for adjournment, please.
I'll
Kayla,
make a motion.
what time? Kayla will bring it up first.
That the Operations
right.
Advisory Committee adjourn at 7:49 PM.
Mover, Dave, seconder,
I will,
John, all in favor? Opposed, carried. Thanks, Rick, Corey, John, much appreciated.